So Susanna Hardy is with IBT Online. They work and help companies, as she'll introduce herself, doing website globalization and adapting and localizing your web presence to different international markets. They're in the UK, but they work extensively with companies in the US, small and mid-sized firms in the US, and they partner a lot with state trade organizations like the Maine International Trade Center, other states, so they're quite a well-known group, and they've been kind enough to pipe in to do this presentation for me and a number of export techs. She's going to talk a little bit about website localization and international online marketing. As I said, if you have some questions, you can sort of feed them in through me, and then she can take some at the end. And I think that's all I needed to do. And Susanna, the floor is yours, and I'll be standing by.
Oh, thank you very much, Mike. And good morning, everybody. I'm sorry that I'm not there in Maine. I would love to be there in Maine, my favorite state. I'm also here with my colleague, Jared. So just to say sort of, who are we, a bit about us. So Jared Grossman is with us also online. And Jared is helps out in the sales and the business development side and is responsible for that sort of the northeast sort of bands, and would be happy to come up and see any of you if you want. And Jared, are you there?
Hey Susanna, I'm here. Hey everyone, it's nice to sort of virtually meet you. Like Susanna said, I'm an online business development manager based in Richmond, Virginia, but like Susanna said, I kind of work the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast part of the U.S.
Great. And I'm actually based in the UK at the moment. We have so a little bit about IBT. I won't spend long about that. Mike gave us a very nice introduction. So IBT Online, we have offices in the United States, in Florida and in Virginia, and then we have offices in the UK, France, Germany, and outreaches in across the world, particularly in China and UAE. And we really focus on mid-cap companies and helping them drive their exports. So we are really, we do website build and management, but we do it for export websites. So where you'll find this competitive and knowledge base, that's our sort of domain, is really on that sort of side, the international websites and international marketing as well. So what we're going to talk about today, then I thought we'd just sort of hone it down to four areas. We're going to talk about sort of why we think exporters need websites and why IBT does this. Why do we even bother doing this? Why do exporters need websites? And then what is an export website? What is website localization? What does that actually mean? And then how do exporters use localized websites? So I'll give you a couple of examples on that. And then I want to talk about the Maine Online Global Program, which you could all harness into and benefit from some assistance that the Maine Export MITC gives to exporting companies for website development. And I've left some time at the end for your questions. So just starting off, sort of, why do exporters need websites? And I guess for us, the key really is just that the websites allow them just to grow. It allows you to be found internationally. It allows you to be understood internationally and allows you to transact your business internationally. For us, it's now become the key tool for international development. And I can give you lots of quotes from the head of marketing from Apple and all kinds of people like that who are very much concur that their leading marketing tool today is their website. And I guess why is that? And this is a diagram which I thought might be sort of interesting, and I'm sure you've seen things like this before. But it's really just to sort of just schematically show how the customer, the client, is now at the center of the business model for companies, whether they like it or not. Today's world is a very customer-centric world. And that is really because the internet allows that customer to interact with all different stakeholders around the company. And the company, in order to build its brand, in order to develop itself needs to somehow, jump over these barriers and somehow, become involved in those discussions and try and lead those discussions that are going on customer to customer or customer to partner or customer to competitor. And the way that they do that is through social media and using their website for us. So this is sort of, putting it just on sort of broad sort of picture of how we see the world and what we see websites being able to do as a tool for exporters. Just a quick, very landscape, broad brush picture of the digital world today. And I think it's worth remembering that, you're all, I haven't met you, but I'm sure you're all successful businesses and business people. So you're all on the web all the time, on your computer, on your emails, all of that. But it's working in international markets. We can assure you that the US is in fact less online. You are less online on average than many, many, many countries. There are countries that spend that the average levels are way higher. So the internet is absolutely global, and its permanence in a business transaction is absolutely ubiquitous. So 4 billion people currently using the internet, 3 billion of which are active social media users as well. And with regard to social media users, I think it's interesting to drill down as well and just say how many are accessing via mobile phones. In other words, they have the internet with them all the time. And this becomes really important when you start targeting markets and using websites in particularly markets like China, India, Mexico, Brazil, any of the so-called mobile first markets. You really need your website to be very easily accessible via their mobile phone, because that's how businesses, not just consumers, but businesses are accessing the internet very much via mobile phone in those markets. So these global sort of big trends, the big companies, the Nikes of the world, the Apples, all jumped onto the internet very early on to boost their internationalization and their exports. And they've used it very much. And I think that now for us, it's also clear that these tools are available to the small and mid-sized companies as well. So what do we also mean when we talk about this sort of thing? I think it's interesting just to look at some of the very big players, for example, some of the platforms. Facebook, for example, is available in over 100 different languages. Now, these are not translation. This is not Google Translate languages. These are all the functionalities of Facebook in over 100 languages. And it's used in, I don't know how many countries actually, but over 100 countries, virtually everywhere in the world, with some big exceptions, notably China. But I think what's interesting to note here is that the vast majority of Facebook users are outside the USA. There are certain markets, again, mobile first markets, Mexico, Indonesia, Vietnam, Brazil, where they'll go on the internet first for Facebook and WhatsApp rather than Google. They'll use Facebook and WhatsApp as a search mechanism. So they'll go onto a WhatsApp group and look at their WhatsApp groups in order to find things rather than you to look at Google. Again, this is important when you're trying to figure out how best to use your website in various markets and what to do. So that each market is important on this. So for us exporters, you're just sort of summing it up, exporters need websites because the entire world is online already. That means that all your clients and prospects are online, obviously. And localized websites, so these local websites which are embedded in the local economy, allow exporters to get found and also to be understood and to transact, which all means basically being able to grow your sales and grow your businesses. So let's now talk about what we mean by website localization. What makes a localized website? And for me, the easiest way to sum it up really is to get back to basics on some of the web aspects. And you should know that search engines are localized. And if search engines are localized, that means then that the websites have to be localized. In other words, if you're in Google in the United States, Google US, Google Main is different from the Google that I have in the UK. And it's very different from the Google you would have in France, Germany, Mexico, Indonesia, Australia, and so on. So these are all different Googles. Google doesn't care about you, the company. It cares about the person searching. And so it will put that client-centric. It'll be that searcher-centric model. It says, okay, what is that person sitting in Frankfurt interested in seeing? They're interested in seeing things that are around them, that are in German, that are well respected in Germany, that are well referenced, that are optimized for the German market, their website. And so if you're targeting Germany, sitting in the USA with their US website, you are simply invisible to the German searcher because you're on about page, 3, 5, whatever. Unless they put in the actual URL, but very few people do that. So, I just make it absolutely clear. If you do not have a local website in the local market, you are invisible, effectively, except if you're going to pay a lot of money. And that's just for Google. Now, Google is the world's most dominant search engine. But if you're building, certain websites, for example, certain markets, particularly China, then you're not looking at Google, you're looking at Baidu. And in Russia, you're looking at Yandex and things like that. So there are other search engines that you have to be aware of, but Google is by far the largest for that. And in the next slide here, I thought I'd just sort of, paint a little picture of where are the big search engines and who's looking at them. So Google dominates most places, but I did mention that there's a couple places which will access Facebook rather than a search engine in order to search for things. This is particularly true of parts of Africa, parts of the Middle East, parts of the Southeast Asia, and Mesoamerica, places like sort of, Costa Rica, places like that. So they go first to Facebook. But the big markets that I think most of you are interested in, that most exporters, early exporters are interested in, that is Europe, Australia, India, South America, Canada, are all Google, and then of course China with Baidu, the Chinese search engine. So and China has very, very different rules with regards to search engines and the whole website. If you have an interest in that, I can expand a bit more on that. I wanted also to show you the difference in terms of just what I look at and what, for example, Jared would look at in Virginia. Now, I tried to think of what is the most prevalent manufacturing piece. I thought, okay, ball bearings. So I said loose ball bearings. And on the left is what I would see in London, loose ball bearings. Note that it's google.co.uk. And on the right-hand side, Richmond, Virginia, google.com, is a very different, different companies here. Lots of Amazon and things like that. But, hendersonbearings.co.uk, which is the UK leader, is nowhere on that page in the US. So just to give you just a sort of snapshot, just a visual impression of what it means to have a localized website. Now I've grouped together on a list 10, characteristics of what we think are define a localized website. When we create a website for a company, these are sort of the 10 big blocks that we would look at. And you'll note that language, fully adapted to local language, in other words, translated well, is one aspect out of 10. It's not at all a question of just getting someone in to translate the page. That will not register well and will be a waste of your money. You have to do several technical aspects like content management systems and hosting it and so on, as well as sort of internet website development like search engine optimization, and mobile enabled for most markets. And then, of course, regulatory requirements. And this is something that actually is going to be more and more important. Regulatory environments going forward are going to play a bigger and bigger role. You'll know that at the end of this month, Europe is rolling out something called the General Data Protection Regulation on the 25th of May, 26th, I can't remember. The GDPR, that will affect anyone doing business in Europe. If you work via distributors, you are concerned with that. So please make sure that your websites are GDPR compliant. And again, I can go through that at more length if you like. So I talked about how the big companies do it, and I mentioned Facebook and things. But what's interesting for us when we look at companies that have really emerged in the last 10, 12 years is that they use the web and localized websites to really accelerate their international drive. So the localized websites were an integral part of their business model to push their internationalization as fast as possible. So Uber, Airbnb are great examples of companies that launched in several markets at the same time via their websites. And again, these are companies that have, are multilingual right from the start. And that's allowed them to have that global reach in such a short time. But as I said, for us, these tools are all available, affordable for good SMEs. There's no reason why mid-cap companies cannot be taking similar advantage of some of the web tools available. Right, so I wanted just to say as well, a lot of you are working via distributors. And I think when I looked at Mike gave me some of your profiles already to prepare for this. And I did note that some of you are working via distributors, and some of you have answered some of my questions as well. And I wanted to point out that for us, one of the key aspects of a localized website is when companies come to us and say, I've got a distributor, I need to change my relationship with my distributor, and I need to support them at the same time. How can I do this? And we have designed websites for that. And I'll give you some examples. So now we're going to move to some examples of how do exporters use localized websites. And I just wanted to sort of bring on some case studies of our own. The first one I want to talk about is these are all mid-sized companies. They're all U.S. companies that I've chosen. This is a company who is a mid-sized company, manufacturer, and very specific, niche product. They had a really, really good distributor in the Netherlands, and he could expand capacity for them, and they had a very good relationship with him. And basically they said, okay, I'm going to use that distributor in the Netherlands as a logistic platform, as a trampoline, basically, to push into Germany and France and Belgium, and that could be supported by the Dutch distributor. And in order to do that, I need to give tools to that distributor to help him build brand awareness. In other words, to get found. So how can he be found in France and in Germany and so on? And then he added the UK afterwards. And we built for him a French and a German website, which were, not huge websites at all. But they're well built and they're well optimized for those markets. They have different pictures. They have, the French one has French pictures. They're optimized for the French market, and that allowed the distributor to really push those out. And then, Rollright itself went to trade shows and did the usual things that companies do for their business, and now have a good steady stream of business coming out of France and Germany. And then after that, they added the UK as well. And most recently, we're currently redoing their US website as well. So it was really to get found in these markets that they wanted. That was their core objective. that they wanted to do for these websites, and that's worked well for them. This one here, this company is all about being understood locally. So I said websites allow you to get found, they allow you to be understood in the market, and they allow you to transact business. This was literally getting understood. ASG make quite specific niche products for airline, for aircraft. And they had some very good agents in China, and China was one of their big prospect markets, but they were unable to actually just clinch the deal. The agent kept going, knocking on the door. They just were unable to sort of finalize that, get the contract through. And we created a Chinese website for them, which was, again, fully optimized, with great WeChat function, with Weibo function, with Baidu function, all of that. And the agents were delighted. They really took it on board, and they said, this is fantastic, because it really shows that you've got a commitment to China. So you're not just some American company who's going to sell one thing and disappear. You cared enough about the Chinese market to actually, make this website for China in a Chinese way, and they were just delighted. And they went back to those prospects and managed to sign the deal within 3 months. It was really a fantastic success for ASG, and we were delighted to be part of that. He then asked us 2 further markets, or 3 actually. They now have, again, similar websites that we've built for them in Mexico, Japan, and Brazil. So again, you'll see that they've chosen markets which are hard. They've chosen markets which are far away, large for them, for the airline industry, but difficult. They haven't chosen sort of, the one next door, because they can sort of manage that. But the ones that are really far away or technically difficult, very large, and therefore need that investment. So that's the path that they've chosen. Again, this is a company, it's a mid-sized management-owned company. One of the things I think also about them is they sell to very, very large companies. So they're small to big, that's the thing. Another case I wanted to show was Pullman Products, again, a mid-sized company, a US company. And here I wanted to give an example of distributors and how that works for companies. This is a company that operates in lots of different verticals. They sell to schools, to governments, to food processors, to artists, to retail. So they have lots of different verticals. So they could have distributors. They can have multiple distributors in markets. But they found that they were not comfortable not knowing the end client, because they should be repeat clients as well. And they wanted to break down that barrier between company and distributor. And they felt that the distributor was sort of pulling all the contacts and not always sharing all the news with the end company. So they decided to slightly change their business model here. And we built them some websites, first across in Europe. And I'll take the example of Germany. We built a German website, and the distributors now have to report back the sales into the website so that they have all the information. The company retains the information of the end clients. So the website really acts as a helping hand for the distributors, but it allows visibility on the end client as well, which is very important to this company. The other thing it did was allow the company to attract and sell to more distributors, to find more distributors. That again was difficult for them because they have a constant need of growing their distributor base. And they also have increased the number of markets they're in now, and are in about 10 or more markets. So just to recap then, as I think all 4 of you are also working via distributors and agents, localized websites are a very, very good way of managing distributors for that. So this is just a repeat slide. I'm sort of rushing on a bit because I'd like to leave some time for questions.
Suzanne,
Yes.
let me ask a question too, just going back to some of those examples. When you localize the websites, What was the distributor's web presence? Did they simply, in many cases, link directly to the manufacturer's website? Did they have some of their own web presence? How did that work together?
Well, most of them had websites of their own. And one of the reasons, or one of the motivating factors for building your own website, is that the distributor website is not an ideal place to showcase your product.
Right.
Because it's next door to the other product. There was one case where the distributor started importing a really cheap version. And basically they felt this distributor is really, he's building up demand, lead generation with our product, and then selling the cheaper version. So they didn't last very long with that distributor. But in most cases, the distributor did not have a great web, he wasn't great at marketing. He was really good at after sales and logistics and networking, and he knew who was who. But he wasn't necessarily great at marketing and building brand for that individual company.
Got it.
So, and they were not always very happy with how their product was displayed on the distributor website. So that was definitely one of the motivating factors as well, of having your own website, which you then link in. You then link into it and say, more detail. Then they drive people, whether they find it via your distributor's website or via your website, they're all driven to your website. So you catch that information. And then you feed the information back to the distributor saying, here you go, fill that order out. And that's, you're my logistic partner. You're my, my after sales, the guy who fills out the forms and does the fiscal rep or whatever, but I keep control of the client.
Great. But what you of course were doing then is essentially building a localized, as we talked about before, a localized website. So it was translated, optimized for search engines in that region. You may have bought the .fr or .ca. So you are essentially creating that local website instead of the distributor, even though it linked to the distributor, you're creating the brand and product presence.
Absolutely. So okay. We create the website for the company, the localized website for the company in that market.
Okay.
And that is what builds the brand awareness in that market.
Thanks.
There's lots of other case studies on our website, and they're all with video testimonial things. If you want to have, if the case studies I just highlighted didn't resonate with you, and you say no, we have an e-commerce or whatever, there you'll find other examples and other ways of doing that on our website. For example, if you're interested in e-commerce, you could try this one here, the Eurodental or All World Machinery. Those are both e-commerce sites, for example. I wanted just to round up, because I'm conscious of time. I wanted to round up before questions, just to make sure you're all aware of Maine Online Global Program. The Maine Online Global Program basically is the commitment from the state of Maine saying, yes, we think that websites are a good thing for exporters, and we're willing to help on that. So, they form this alliance with us to help companies get a localized website in whatever market they wanted to. And you can find all the details on our website or in this presentation. There are 2 products for the Maine Online Global Program. The first is option A, which basically means that for $12,000 minus $2,500 of MITC assistance, we build 2 country-specific localized websites. Those localized websites are fully functional, fully optimized, fully translated, fully localized for that market. And that can be anywhere in the world. That can be South Korea and Brazil, whatever combination you want. That'll be fine with us. We then host it for for a year, and we'll also teach you some of the search engine optimization tools, and especially the reporting tools that you will need. So you'll get some training in that as well. These websites are small, but we'd say they should be sufficient. They're 12 pages long, and you know, with that should be enough for you to be launching into a market. And you know, we've designed it so that hopefully from your budget you'll have some leftover cash to make sure that you then use these websites and use them while you're at trade shows for your distributors and so on. So that's option A, for a two market expansion program. And as Mike was just saying, you know, we'll help you find the domain names and buy them for you. We'll help you with the template layout, make sure it's all mobile enabled and so on. And that generally takes 3 months from start to finish. We say 3 months. Occasionally it can be less, but we say 3 months is a good time. The option B is just basically more customized multi-market web presence. It's for if those two markets don't work, and then you say no, I need an e-commerce enabled with a logistics platform with a secure area for my distributor. It's a whole different thing. Then in that case, we're going to have to do it sort of and say, okay, what do you need on that website? Again, for us, it's not so much the size of the website. It's right from the start. We have to figure out how you're going to use it, and that'll define much more sort of what it looks like after that. But again, even in this sort of open-ended discussion, MITC assist with $2,500 again. These generally more complex websites generally take us between 3 and 4 months from start to finish to go live. Even the more complex ones with a lot of bells and whistles and apps, we try and keep 2-4 months. So that's the main online global program as well. And sort of just finishing up my talk, I hope I've left enough time for some questions that Jared and myself can answer for you, Mike.
Yes, you know, you did great. And let me just, I've got a question I just want to add, Susanna. So this is funded, what she's talking about, this MITC assistance is funded through the STEP program. So, you know, it's subject to availability of funds, and they, you know, budget. What are you nodding as you now know the answer?
Yeah, I was kind of waiting till she went through it.
Okay.
I'll be the bearer of bad news now.
After, okay, all right. So I just want to be clear that there is some subject to availability of funds, though it also starts again in October. In theory, we're applying again. So it may not be, even if it's not available this year, it may be available in the next fiscal year, which is not too far away. So just so you know what that's about, some of you have used STEP for trade shows and other things. That's where this program comes from. Okay, now Mark had a question. Mark,
who owns those websites?
I don't know if you heard that. Mark's question was, who owns the websites that you were working on?
Very good question. The company owns the website. There are some places where it's really hard to buy domain names if you don't have a physical address, but that's okay. We can get around that. We then, if that's the case and we have to do it for you, we would then sell it onto you and repoint it at exactly the same price. So the company always owns the website.
Right. Right. Other questions? Bill?
As we, Susanna, my name is Bill. As we increasingly globalized our website, we encountered increasingly the problem of end users in other countries locating our distributors in the United States and wanting or actually buying from them to achieve a lower price than their in-country distributor. So do you face that problem, or have your clients face that problem, and how did you deal with it?
Could you hear that, yes, Susanna?
Yes, I could. Okay. We have seen that problem of parallel sales, and we have seen that problem. And I don't have 100% solution, but I can say that what we've done with several clients for this, and Bullman is an example, in fact, because they were getting that a lot. What we did was to separate the websites, and you can do that fairly easily. When we build, let's say, for example, you build a let's say you want a South American web, you're targeting Mexico and South America. for South America, we would then have a separate domain name. You know, you'd be the company ABC dot, and we do a South American URL, so that there's a bigger block. If you're linking everything back and building on always your US website, you're not really optimizing each one individually. And if you just separate the websites more, it adds a big barrier for a company to go and go back into your US one. Particularly if you add a geolocation function. Do you know what a geolocation function is?
We did some of that. The challenge was if the end user bought the product from a distributor out of their home distributor's territory, was the incentive of the home distributor was affected, and also the follow-up warranty service might be denied. But what you're saying helped solve that problem. We did some other things as well.
Yeah, definitely. The more you separate the individual websites and locate them in regions at least, and again put in a strong geolocation functionality. We're doing that a lot with our clients at the moment for Europe because of GDPR. One way of getting around the GDPR compliance issue is to simply say, right, make sure that no European goes onto a US website. Otherwise, you've got to change your US website. Can you imagine what a hassle that is? So rather than do that, create a European website with your name, you know, Susanna.eu for Europe. And that has a strong geolocation function on it. Then the European finds you, goes onto that website and gets stuck there. You can't migrate off. And that's one way to get around GDPR. So that's one way of getting around as well, getting back onto your US website.
Good. Questions from Jill?
I mean, my primary focus is Southeast Asia, particularly China. And
Hold on one sec. Can you hear her?
I can, yes. Southeast Asia and China.
Wait, sorry.
yeah, so question for you, your experience with customers that have chosen to do localization in, let's just focus on China, it's a little bit simpler. Have you done specific websites hosted in China, or versus, so my debate is, do you do that at all, or do you just simply
We do a few a month.
And then the difference between doing that versus focusing in on the WeChat platform?
Well, WeChat it depends. Do you have which account you have for WeChat? I would suggest Weibo first. It's hard to get any traction in WeChat if you're not known. If nobody knows you, it's not like you can pay to come in. It's not like a Facebook in that sense, WeChat. You can't just put up a website and then say, please invite me to WeChat. So what you have to do is get a certain notoriety, a reputation, a brand awareness before you get into WeChat. It's very hard otherwise. So what we would do is do a microsite hosted in China. In fact, we'd host it in Hong Kong. Anyway, host it in China. For legal reasons, we're going to host it in Hong Kong. And we do Weibo, W-E-I-B-O, which is sort of like, people compare it to Twitter. It's not. It's much more sophisticated than that. And it has the same advertising functionality as a Facebook. And that will allow you to build brand awareness. Weibo, and then you get onto WeChat.
Do you do? Are you doing some? You're doing some advertising on WeChat too?
We're not yet. No, we use it to support all our transactions with customers, meaning communications transactions. We're not moving money or anything like that. Although I would love to find a way to do that.
Okay, so this, I was wondering. So it does apply.
It's our communication platform.
Got it.
Sure.
So her comment would potentially apply.
Same as like WhatsApp and
Got it.
that same sort of thing. But no, great insight. I appreciate that.
Right. Any other questions? And Susanna, can you just go back for one? Maybe more for me. Just go back to there's that slide, which we never get to spend enough time on, but it has the 10 list of localization, the 10 things you do to localize. Yeah, this one.
This one?
Yes. So this is, I always like this slide because it's also that sort of list of, it's the to-do list in terms of localizing, right? I mean, that it has a number of different components, right? To
Yes.
mobile enable it, to translate, to make sure your keywords, your search engine optimizer, the keywords match the country, since, you know, what you call different things is different than the UK than it may be in the US. Hosting local content, which and local links. I mean, it's a whole set of things to do that that a company can get your help with, take on themselves. But this is sort of the menu, right, or the game plan.
Absolutely. And some of them look sort of, you know, why do you need to be hosted locally? That sounds like a recipe for getting hacked, and it's not at all. I think it's totally secure. Mostly these companies are all huge American companies anyway. They just have to be global. You host locally in order to get good up and down speed. If you're not hosted locally, and if you're designing and running your website out of Maine and you're targeting Australia, it's going to take forever to get to see your website in Australia. You know, the upload and download speed are going to be seconds. And seconds on the internet is just like, oh no, can't be bothered, and you zap off.
And Susanna, that also, I believe, is factored, well, in Google, I think that's factored into search engine optimization too, isn't it?
It is, and it is. It's
being annoying.
It is. It's also, you cannot have, for example, a Chinese website without being hosted locally. Baidu does not accept non-local hosting.
Got it. Great. Yeah, that's a good example. Thank you for that's the kind of example I was hoping to surface. Okay. Any other questions before we close out from our connection to the UK? Great. All right. Well, then we're going to give you a round of applause, which hopefully we can hear.
Thank you very much.
You're getting
very kind. Happy exporting.
Susanna, thank you again for speaking with us. I know it's a little later than there. We appreciate it as always. We'll sign off, and I'll thank you more fully separately.
Oh, it was a great pleasure. Happy exporting. And if we can be of any assistance, please let us know.
Great. Thank you, and thank you, Jared, too.
Thank you. Thank you, Mike. Bye-bye. Bye.
Okay. The logistics of the morning, I've made it through that part. Always worried when there's another continent involved.